Good afternoon, for we are now officially afternoon in Canada, and welcome to our 14th webinar featuring two of Israel and BGU's best and brightest experts in the field of satellites. My good friend Dan Blumberg, Professor Dan Blumberg, who I met when I first started at BGU in 2011, and Dr. Shimrit Maman, who I really just met today, which was a pleasure. Shalom, bonjour, and hello to all of you who have registered from around the globe. To be exact, Israel, England, Scotland, France, the United States, and of course, Canada. We might also have some of our colleagues from the associates offices in Europe, South America, and Mexico. I am Mark Mendelson, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Associates of Ben-Gurion University, and it is once again my pleasure and honor to be moderating today's program. I'm thrilled to tell you that we have over 100 participants registered, and we expect even more to watch us live streaming on Facebook like we did during our last webinar. My staff, our lay leaders, and I spend many hours discussing which experts and from which fields to invite from BGU, and I believe that so far we have chosen wisely, as each webinar has really resonated with our supporters and friends. I could proudly say that to date, we've had over 2,500 participants on our webinars. So on behalf of all of us at CABGU, I welcome and thank you all for participating. I must say that this is just another feather in our Canadian cap, or our Canadian toque, of successes during these difficult COVID times. Our format today will be just a bit different from our other webinars. I will first introduce Professor Blumberg, and then we'll introduce Dr. Maman after Dan finishes. Each will speak for 15 minutes or so, and I will give each a 5-minute warning before they are to finish their presentation. As usual, my colleague and newest member of our team, Galit Solomon, Director of Marketing and Communications, who started with us only about 5 weeks ago, will take over the question and answer segment. Zach Ostrov, Executive Director of Winnipeg, and our Chief Resident Techie will be handling the technical duties behind the scenes. For our listeners, whoever has a comment or question, please, you will see the icon at the bottom of your screen, which you will just have to click on to submit the question. Remember, the topic today is BGU in space, its satellites, and the recent announcement of the opening at our university of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Very timely, what with the latest successes of Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket's successful docking at the International Space Station. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce Professor Dan Blumberg, who is the VP for Regional and Industrial Development and the Simon Family Chair in Remote Sensing at Ben-Gurion University. From 2014 to 2019, Professor Blumberg served as the Vice President and Dean for Research and Development. Dan received his PhD from Arizona State University in 1993, where he studied and worked in the Planetary Geology group. He has combined field studies with the use of remote sensing data and recently led the development and successful launch of a Ben-Gurion University nanosatellite, BGU-SAT, a 3U CubeSat with a shortwave infrared imager on board. Whew. I actually had to look up to find out what is a 3U CubeSat, and it is a satellite measuring at least 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. Professor Blumberg has been a leader of the development of the IT and cyber ecosystems in Beersheba, has brought over 40 multinational companies, 70 startups, and 300 new engineers to the Advanced Technologies Park of Beersheba. He is also a consummate mensch and a really nice guy. He's a member of a national committee designed to leverage the AI industry and research in Israel. He was recently elected to be an Academy member of the International Academy of Astronautics. Dan, please take over. The screen is all yours.
Mark, wow, thanks. After that introduction, it's going to be difficult. Anyhow, I'll start off with thanks, with hello, first of all. Hello, good morning. Bonjour, bienvenue, shalom. It's great to see all of you and have you all here. I want to start off by thanking my friend Mark Mendelson, Simon Ben-Simon, and Zach for organizing all of this. And a special thanks to Ernie Simon, who's here with us in the background and is a big supporter of our lab and what we're doing. I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes with you. And some of you may have heard me talk about cybersecurity or about the Innovation District. Today, we're only going to talk about space research and the Israeli space program. It's actually a special day today because the President of Israel just announced this afternoon the launch of the next Bereshit program, Bereshit 2, and BGU, I can tell you, is going to be a part of that. We had several girls here at the university with us today celebrating the event, and maybe Shimrit will say a few words about these girls and how they connect to our lab later on. So now I'm going to share a screen with you, and we're going to get on with our talk. As I said, I'll be talking about what we do in the lab, about remote sensing, the involvement of Ben-Gurion University in the Israel space program. And I'll start off by telling you about Israel space program in general and work my way through it, and then lead to what Shimrit will tell you later on about specific programs that we're running within the lab. So Israel space program is not something to be taken lightly. There are only 10 countries worldwide capable of building and launching satellites, as we said, from womb to tomb. Israel is one of those 10 countries. And when Israel launches its own satellites, and we do launch satellites, we're the only country that launches to the West. That's for geopolitical reasons. I can explain later on if there are any questions. But that means that we actually have to build lighter satellites, smaller satellites. And obviously, as a small country, we also want to build them much cheaper. So let's see a little bit about what we're doing, where Ben-Gurion University gets involved. Here you can see a satellite image of Israel, just to get you into the atmosphere. You can see, amazingly, the border between Israel and Egypt from space, and that's different land uses in the Sinai Desert as you cross into Israel over here. The dunes are much darker, but even if we look, and this is less shown, even if we look at the West Bank, you can still see the West Bank running over here, and that's because the JNF does not plant trees beyond the green line, and there's use of trees over here for heating and other things. You can see the Dead Sea, you can see the pools over here, the evaporation pools, the Lake of Galilee, Kinneret, Haifa over here, and the Nile Delta right over here. So let's move on. As I said, Israel launches its own satellites, builds its own satellites. We're involved with a few of them, and I'll tell you about that later on. We have the Shavit launcher, which can launch from Israel. We started off with the Ofek satellites. I'll show you that in a moment. Those were military. The Eros, which are actually based on the Ofek satellites, but for civilian use. The Amos satellites, which are all for communications. Texar, which we've been involved in, that's a synthetic aperture radar. Our own BGU sat, Ben-Gurion University of the Negev satellite, together with the Israel aerospace industry. And Dr. Shimrit Maman will talk about that as we move forward. And Bereshit, we had Bereshit 1, and now we're going on to Bereshit 2. So the space program in Israel started back in 1988 to provide us independence in the ability to observe neighboring countries and gaining space independence, not being having to rely on other countries to collect information. You can see over here, Ofek 1 being built. You can see that it's, I don't know, any of you who know most of the Earth observation satellites know that they are huge. You can see the Ofek 1 over here, pretty much the size of a man standing next to it. And you can see the launch pad, the Israeli launch pad over here to the left, just a moment before this rocket is going to ignite and take a spacecraft up into space. By the way, this picture is of the Ofek 7 launching. BGU has been involved in many ways. So first of all, our graduate students hold many positions within the Israel aerospace industry, not only the company, that includes Rafael, Elbit, and so on. BGU graduates comprise about 30% of the Israeli engineering force, but we're also involved directly with several of the satellites. One of them, for example, is the Venus satellite, which is not going to Venus, it's actually observing Earth. It's the vegetation environment, new microsatellite. It's a joint endeavor between Israel and France. The chief scientist is from BGU, Professor Arnon Carnielli, who teaches with us in the same department. We in the lab were involved in building the latest nanosatellite, which is totally built in Israel, all made in Israel, all blue and white, was a shortwave infrared imager. And you're going to see a picture of that later on in Dr. Maman's talk. We're capable of building these satellites, we're capable of testing all of the components, and we're capable of operating them once they're in space. In fact, we have a receiving station in our lab, and we're capable of controlling BGU-SAT from the lab. Now let's see a few pictures from the Israeli satellites, and you can see this was provided to me by ImageSat International, an Israeli company. This is from Eros satellite. This is from about 500 kilometers above Earth, and you can see the Toyota Center Stadium right over here, and you can even read what it says on the top. Let's move along to some other pictures. So this is San Diego. You can see the air carrier over here. This is from an Israeli satellite, also from an altitude of about 500 kilometers. And wow, if you look at this area over here, you can actually see the ropes or the chains that are holding the air carrier and tying it to the coast or the harbor over here. Let's move along and see a little more. And this is a pretty amazing picture in Bolivia, South America. And what do people do in South America? What's the most popular sport? Football. And if you look carefully at this stadium, you can even see that there's a football game taking place. And look carefully, you can count the 11 football players on each side of this stadium. Pretty amazing picture that you can actually see the people on the background of the stadium over here. Well, we don't only use optical satellites. Everything you saw a moment ago was black and white pictures, pretty much like we used to take with the old cameras that we had at home. But now we also have the capability in Israel, and we're one of the only countries in the world capable of building extremely high resolution satellites that can take high resolution pictures, but not in the visible light, but in the microwave light. These are synthetic aperture radar capable of seeing through clouds. And here you can see a high resolution image of the Golan Heights. And if you look carefully, for example, at this agricultural field over here, you'll see dry patches in the field. We can see irrigation was in that field. We can see soil water content. I started my career looking at planetary surfaces, at Earth, Mars, and Venus. I couldn't skip this talk without showing you some images, new images of Mars and some of the work we're doing in the lab. So these are sand dunes on Mars. They're dark. The sand is different than on Earth. You can see over here, it's much darker, although you can find some dark dunes in Hawaii. And you can see over here, dark slope streaks on the surface of Mars on the boundary of an impact crater. So now we have a graduate student actually studying how these are formed, whether they formed by liquid water, brine, or wind streaks. They're not wind streaks. We know that. We have some hypotheses as to what they are. But you must understand these are only a few meters wide. These are amazing features that we're trying to understand. And then from that, understand the climate on Mars. We can use satellite images to study changes on Earth. And I picked this image, which shows you an island in formation in South America. And you can see over here an image from 2016. And if you look at 2017, this island has grown, in fact. And this is the radar image over here. And you can even see a ship next to it. We also combine the radar images together with optical images, and we develop new methods for looking at what we call hyperspectral images, where we have not only the red, green, and blue, but we'll have hundreds of wavelengths from which we're trying to collect information about Earth. And here you can see some pictures of the Amazon, invisible. If you look over here, you can even see some fires. Most of the time, this is covered by clouds over here, as you can see. And this is a radar image with the riverbeds over here. So this is 2019. Looking through clouds with radar, we can also see deforestation that takes place in South and Central America, and most of these areas are covered by clouds most of the year. And here's an image, by the way. I picked this one. You can see the clouds in the background and the radar image in front. And these clouds are totally transparent to the radar. But let's go to high resolution radar. And I told you, Israel is one of the only countries in the world capable also not only of launching satellites, but also building radar satellites. So this is not from an Israeli satellite, I have to say that. This is an image I'm allowed to show. It's a pretty unique image. Look over here, you can see an aircraft over here, and most of the aircraft is transparent. You can see the engines, you can see some of the metallic properties, you can see the outline, but it became transparent, and you can see the ground image right on the right above over here. Our lab produces students. Some of them have gone out and built their own startups, and we're really proud of what they do. For example, Planet Watches that maps forests and agricultural fields, Utilis that maps subsurface infrastructure, and the newest one this week, which got the first investment, is SiteBit, which actually looks for drowning or helps lifeguards on beaches. So what we do in the lab is we collect imagery. We even built recently a camera, and that's becoming a new startup. We build the models, design the models to interpret the data, and then we can actually interpret the data in our lab. We develop all of the algorithms for that, the programming part, and managing the data. And with that, I want to stop because Mark's going to yell at me in a moment that my time is out. I want to thank you all. Really proud. Wait, Mark, one sentence. I'm really proud that the next talk on this was a student of mine, Shimrit. I did not say is a student, was a student of mine, is still working with me in the lab, and I'm really honored to have her here with me in the follow-up. So, Mark.
Dan, you actually have another minute and a half.
I try to keep to time. I can tell you a lot more. There's a lot more to tell you, but you gave me a time slot.
I remember when I first came to your lab in October of 2011, and you showed me, you were explaining to me as much as I could understand exactly what you're doing, and you were showing to me some satellite pictures, and seeing what you have shown today, it's like a different world. The clarity of the picture, the ability to take these intricate shots from 500 miles plus above is just
kilometers, but it's still a far distance.
It's kilometers, but you know,
kilometers, miles, you know.
And my last little quip is, you give new and very important meaning to the expression that we use in North America of someone being a space cadet. When you say it, it really means something very important. Thanks a lot. Fascinating. Dr. Shimrit Maman is a research associate in the Homeland Security Institute and director of the Earth and Planetary Image Facility, both at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. Her research deals with the application of satellite technologies, remote sensing and GIS to environmental challenges and climate change. She is an integral part of the research team leading BGU SAT, Israel's first research nanosatellite. She also serves as a UN SPIDER expert and heads the Israeli Regional Support Office of the United Nations Platform for Space-Based Information for disaster management and emergency response. Whoa. Previously, she served as the board director of DMARS and is a founding board member of Y-Space, a women's association promoting gender equality among Israeli STEAM professionals, and was appointed by the UNOOSA as a mentor in the Space for Women network. Maman leads diverse education and outreach programs promoting science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, which stand for STEAM, using hands-on research activities at both the national and international scales, including the unique all-girl international remote sensing program, SheSpace. Shimrit, the screen is all yours. That's, whoa, quite the background.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. But when you have a boss such as mine, you have to keep up to the standards. Okay, and Danny gave me the full opportunity to grow. And I was so proud to be a student, and I'm still very fortunate to be working with him. So thank you for the introduction. And I'm just going to pick up from where Danny stopped. I just want to make sure you're all seeing my screen okay.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. So our main research deals with the applications of using these satellites data, and we do a variety of things. I'm just going to highlight a few. We have a lot of research going on with hyperspectral target and anomaly detection. And the difference between them is that a target is something we already know what we're looking for, while an anomaly is something that we're not basically sure we know what we're looking for. So we have both data sets in order to use it in a variety of applications, and we apply it for different purposes. Hyperspectral data are very precise, and we have a lot of spectral bands that allow us to get really nice information from space and airborne data, and this is applied throughout our students in no matter what their background is. So we have a lot of students coming from departments like electro-optics and physics and electrical engineers, but we also have students coming from different backgrounds such as geography, geoscience, geochemistry, biology, and then we use these methods in order to applicate it in specific data such as here. This is using a GPR. GPR is ground penetrating radar to see the subsurface. In this case, we see contact lines of dunes. So while Danny showed you the dunes from space and both on Mars and Venus, we could also see subsurface. So such applications allow us to map dune heights and dune variations, such as in this research in dune mapping by INSAR. This research used SAR data, synthetic aperture radar, in order to see deformations in the height in a millimetric scale. Well, Danny already talked about Mars and Venus and their application of wind streaks, so I'm going to skip that. And I am going to go on to the rapid response after natural disaster research we're having. And this is why the United Nations has established the Regional Support Office in Israel. So one of the things that happened in 2004, and most of you are supposed to remember it, is that we had a really large tsunami event in the coasts of Indonesia and Sri Lanka. And one of the problems when we take photos of such areas is that they are usually covered by clouds. So one of the things the group did is use radar data that penetrates the clouds in order to map the coastline, which you see here in blue. But the thing is this is a picture before the tsunami hit. And I'm going to show you now the post tsunami, and you could see the areas that are flooded inland. And still, this is the blue line, just for reference, showing the coastline. Okay, so this is the pre and this is the post-tsunami image. And the thing is that following that large event, which took the life of 250,000 people, United Nations realized that they need to advance their methodology using space technology, and the UN Spider platform for the UN Spider is the the space-based information platform for disaster management and emergency response was established. And they established 25, since then, 25 centers have established worldwide, and we are the 25th. And the thing is that this is really important because once we use space as a tool to enhance our data and knowledge, we could use it correctly to send forces. Because if we see in the image these dark areas that are actually these flooded areas, we know that there is no need, and it's really sad to say it, but probably here there would be no survivors. But it's even more than just not sending the forces to the correct places. It's also showing the forces where they could travel and where do they have path, because this is a road they could still take, and here they would not be able to travel, and this would require helicopters and different kind of strategies for the emergency response. So doing that, we developed several algorithms that I'm going to show in the next slide. But we established the Regional Support Office in Israel using with the support of the Israeli Space Agency, and we're currently working on capacity building and algorithms for the rapid emergency response using satellite mapping. And for that matter, we have a really nice collaboration with ImageSat International, which is an Israeli company that operates all the high resolution images that Danny showed in his slides. And what we do, not just in the case of an emergency response, we also train worldwide groups and people with our knowledge, and such in the case of the South Korean Research Institute, that we show them how to use the data and how to use our algorithms in order to do their own research and use it correctly in case of an emergency. So using optical data that is just what we see with our eyes, and combining it with radar data, which is a longer wavelength, we could actually enhance our vision and see things that we cannot see in just by looking at the image. And that enhances the accuracy of the mapping and enables us to produce damage assessment maps very rapidly for this emergency response. Now, the second thing I was asked to talk about is Ben-Gurion University's satellite, which is called BGU sat. And this is a quite unique satellite. But the thing is that Danny already showed you, and he's in the field for over 20 and something years. And if we go back in time, we understand that we have Earth observations available for over 60 years now. And this is an image of an American satellite. So the basic question that should be asked now is what's changing? And what we're seeing in the recent years is that we are getting some kind of miniaturization of the spacecraft. For example, and these are the people for scale. This is an European satellite called ENVISAT, which weighs 8,000 kilo. And look how big it is. It's the size of a bus. But during the past years, we see that the satellites are getting smaller. Okay, and I left the people for scale and smaller. Okay, and this is the size of the Venus satellite that is also a joint venture with Ben-Gurion University. This is already a microsat. But when we're talking about nanosatellites and our satellite, we're talking much smaller. And if we look at the applications and the trends of the launches for the past, from 2014 and 2018, and the future launches that are supposed to be, we see that most of the missions are for Earth observation and remote sensing. So we basically asked the question, is this the next generation of satellite technology? And the answer was obviously yes, otherwise we wouldn't go into this venture. So Ben-Gurion went into this venture in the knowledge that we wanted to see if we could actually demonstrate, take a really large satellite and squeeze it into a small one. And we wanted to enable our students with hands-on education and not just talk about satellites. We really wanted them to fix the things and build them together and program it. And not just, it's just like swimming without a pool if you don't have the capability. And I have to admit that science came as a third objective, but it came, and we have a lot of science going on. We have over 30 research groups in BGU working on this small satellite. So how small is it? It's really small. This is the satellite just before it was launched, but I don't think that you could actually understand the size of it. So I want to stop my presentation for a minute just to show you how small it is. So I'm just gonna, in just a moment, I am just going to stop my background because in the picture you can't realize, but this is the size of the satellite. And when we're talking about CubeSat, we're talking about 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters. And we said it's a 3U satellite. We have 3 units, okay? So this is a 10 by 10 by 30 centimeters, but this is the exact size of the satellite. Now, it is a bit bigger because we do open the solar panels, okay? And then it looks a bit bigger. And the reason why I can't show you the real satellite is because it's actually in space and still operative. And you will only see this one in this presentation. So this is the real satellite just before it was launched. So it's a 3U CubeSat in a low Earth orbit, and it's the only nano satellite in space currently that has a shortwave infrared camera on it. And this is a joint venture with the IAI and the Israeli Space Agency. Now, when we talk about the sizes of satellites, so we're in a category that is called nanosatellites. So it's up to 10 kilograms. Our satellite is just a bit less than 5 kilograms. And just to scale you up, because today was the launch, the announcement about the upcoming launch in 3 years of the second Bereshit mission. This is the first Bereshit mission. This is the first spacecraft. And when it is empty without any fuel in it, this spacecraft weighs 160 kilograms. And with the fuel, it weighs 580 kilograms. So we're still dealing with very small things. And the reason for this reduction in size is because we want to send as many satellites to space as we can at a lower cost. The most expensive part of the launch is, the most expensive part of the mission is the launch. And if we reduce the size of the satellite or the spacecraft, we reduce the price of the launch. So our satellite was successfully launched on February 15, 2017 from India. This is actually a huge rocket, much higher than the Shimrit that Danny showed. It's a 44-meter rocket. And this was a very successful launch because we had over 104 satellites on it. And I'm just going to move to the video showing you the launch itself. And I'm going to be done with that. Okay. So
PSL VC-37 with the Cartosat 2 series spacecraft and 103 co-passenger nanosatellites lifted off majestically on 15th February 2017 at 9:28 hours IST from SDC Sriharikota, the spaceport of India.
So that was actually English, but that was Indian English. And he was explaining about the launch and where it was taken off from. And this is launched over the ocean because, as you will see, everything it doesn't need on the way, it just drops. Okay, and these drop back into the ocean. This is part of the space junk we're creating. Okay, and that was the heat shield that separates along the way. Okay, and the rocket is actually composed of 3 stages. And you will see the second stage that separated just now. And at this stage, we're actually already in space. So it takes us, that was the third stage of the rocket. It takes us about 10 minutes to get to space using this rocket. And this was the Cartosat. And you will see this is another nanosatellite and another nanosatellite. And this is Earth. Now, the unique thing about this launch is that if both sides of the rocket, we had nanosatellites coming out every 6 seconds, in total 104 nanosatellites. And it was a crazy number of nanosatellites because, first of all, that's the largest number of satellites that was launched in one event. And the most craziest thing, even crazier than that, is that they're all operative. I'm just gonna, and you could see how nice they're coming out. They're being thrown out every 6 seconds, all in the low Earth orbit. 80 of these satellites belong to a company named Planet. And I'm just going to skip this so you'll see the other side, which is the prettier view of Earth. They're all in a height of 500 kilometers above Earth and all fully operative. So basically, we thought that our nanosatellite will last for 3 months. We were hoping, and it's still operative. It just shows what a great job we did. And we're still getting data, and we have already over 6,000 images from our little satellite from all over Earth. These are images of the satellite itself going over in Israel at a time of a storm and at a time that Israel is clear. So it travels at a speed of 7.5 kilometers per second, really quick. And we're very, very proud of this. And when I was saying that we could do the job of a very large satellite, these are 2 images, one of a satellite as big as a bus and one of BGU sets. So we were able to demonstrate the capability we were looking for. Do I still have time to go on? Is that
Actually, you've gone over by 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to stop now and just say
questions. We do have questions.
Okay. So I'm just going to stop me. Okay, sorry.
That was fascinating, really, I have to say. Tremendous real time watching the satellites. And I learned during your talk that we are BGU, we are in great company, that only us and the Technion are the 2 universities in Israel which have this tremendously advanced satellite program. I will now give the screen over to my colleague, our newest staff member, Director of Communications, Galit, Solomon, who I'm sure loved the fact that the launch was from India because her parents, when they made Aliyah, came from Karachi and Mumbai. Galit, it's all yours.
Galit, you're muted.
There we go. Okay, take two, here we go. Professor Blumberg and Dr. Maman, thank you both for your presentation. I agree with Mark, absolutely fascinating. And to be able to see the visuals, it just gives a whole new dimension to conversations about space and space exploration. We've got several questions and we're gonna try to get through as many as possible. Professor Blumberg, I'm going to start with you. Some very exciting news, as you alluded to at the top of your presentation, coming out of Israel today about Bereshit 2.0. Israel planning to launch the second moonshot in 2024, and there's a possibility that the United Arab Emirates will be joining in as well. Tell us about BGU's involvement with this particular program.
Well, so on Bereshit 1, first of all, we have to start off with Bereshit 1, okay? So I'm gonna start with the fact that I think 2 of the 3 founders actually studied at BGU. Many of the engineers involved went to BGU as students. Secondly, the bus, that's all of the computer system on board Bereshit, was tested on BGU set. So we actually created legacy in order to enable Bereshit through BGU set. So the whole computer system was tested first on BGU set and then on Bereshit. Also on Bereshit 1, there was a magnetometer. The design for that, not the construction, but the design and the calibration was all done through someone from our lab, through Dr. Asaf Gross, who's from our lab. And we're really proud of that. Now let's go on to Bereshit 2. So Bereshit 2, we are going to be the first university to sign an agreement to be involved in Bereshit 2. We had today a bunch of girls that Shimrit has been advising for the past 2 years, high school kids, studying space and generating interest in what happens. And trust me, we're going to be involved in many aspects of Bereshit 2 also.
Very good. Thank you for that, Dr. Blumberg. And as Dr. Blumberg just mentioned, pardon me, Professor Blumberg just mentioned, my next question is for Dr. Shimrit. In regards to She Space, tell us a little bit more about this program, what your inspiration was for getting involved, and then beyond that also, where is this going to take space exploration for women in Israel and beyond?
Okay. Well, my personal motivation was my daughter that in one of the talks that the astronauts were over at BGU, she actually asked me, why aren't there more female astronauts? And it's funny because the same astronaut that she visited, Dr. Shannon Walker, is currently right now in the International Space Station. And what we did is just noticing around and just looking around, we do understand that we have a problem in the academy, a very acute problem, because while the student body in Israel is composed of 60% of female students, up to the postdoctoral level. So we're talking about bachelor's, master's, and PhDs. We have a majority of female students. From that point onward, as we go up in the academic ladder, women disappear. Okay, so we wanted to target that problem. And looking around, we don't feel that on a daily basis, especially because we had our university president, which Professor Rivka called me, and we saw her breaking all these glass ceilings and enabling us to proceed in our academic career. But still, we have some leaky pipeline at that stage that we need to see what's the influence and how we could change it. So if we start working with female staff and students at the stage they already got to university, in my opinion, it's too late, because most of them already decided what they want to major in and what they want to do when they grow up. So we decided to target high school girls. So we started a program called She Space for high school girls. And in that way, we could still influence their perception and show them just by working with us and enabling them to come in the lab and to work with us and sit next to us and listen to our talks and discussions, and know that in the parts of the activities we had, even two of the mentors in the program were pregnant. And just discussing those issues, it showed them what it is like to be a scientist. And it always shows a different picture of what they thought it would be. This program was recognized by United Nations as a key program, and we went international. We currently, last year, we had 4 countries participating in the program. It was called She Space International. We had Brazil, Germany, United States, and Israel simulating a research program for young girls. So we had all groups of girls around the world doing climate research using local satellites. Each of the groups had to use local satellites. The Israeli group used both Venus and BGU sat for that matter. And this year we're even expanding a bit more, because South Korea are joining the program and Spain are joining the program. And hopefully after this talk, maybe we'll have a group from Canada.
That's great. Congratulations. Sounds like a very successful program so far, and moving definitely in the right direction. Dr. Maman, you had mentioned that there was a total of 104 nanosatellites that were launched in that latter piece that you shared with us. I'll open this up to this question. It comes to us from one of the attendees. If you can please tell us about the traffic out there in space. How does that look, and is it getting crowded out there now?
Absolutely. Well, actually, Danny, I'm going to answer something and then I'm going to hand it over so you can talk about NORAD. But I'm just going to correct myself. It's 103 nanosatellite and 1 microsatellite. No, 1 microsatellite Cartosat, a total of 104. And
Right.
Danny, you could take that and talk about NORAD as well.
So thanks. So first of all, there are roughly, to give you a number, there are roughly about 2,700 satellites up in space at the moment, close to 2,000 in what we call low Earth orbit. About, I'd say, 1,800 in low Earth orbit. But at the same time, there is the North American Aerospace Defense Command. So it's a US command that actually monitors every object that's smaller than a very small size that's out in space, and provides warning to satellite operators that their satellite is getting close to another object. You can actually access the data, see where your satellite is, and collect a lot of information about each and every one of the objects. And from that, you can also try and calculate how your orbit is working and whether you're losing altitude or shifting away from the orbit you plan. And there is a lot of there are a lot of objects out there, but the new rules in place so that every object that is launched to space actually has to find its way back down and burn in the atmosphere.
Okay, and still staying with you, Professor Blumberg, another question that comes to us from one of our attendees today. Who are some of the other universities that are involved in sending nanosatellites into orbit, and are they collaborating with them? And I'm just thinking that this might also apply to Dr. Maman.
So I'll start my answer by saying, first of all, there are 7 research universities or 8 research universities in Israel now. At pretty much every university, there is some aspect of space research, some element. The 2 universities that are heavily involved in this are Ben-Gurion University and Technion. Ariel University just recently also built a very nanosatellite, another nanosatellite. BGU and the Technion have been working together for a long time. In fact, just today I spoke to my colleague at the Technion probably 3 times. And met him 2 nights ago for some discussions. Initially, we thought of launching satellites together. There's an amusing story as to why we didn't launch them together. Ours is up in space, theirs is not. But it's mostly luck sheer luck
Mhm.
and not planning.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's the answer.
And Dr. Maman, did you want to add anything to that?
I would just like to say that the Israeli Space Agency with the Herzliya Space Center also has a program for youth, for high school students that build satellites. And we have a program called TEVEL, which stands for Talmidim Bunim Lavyan, so students building satellites, and TEVEL also is the universe in Hebrew. And they built 8 nano satellites, CubeSats, the size that I showed you, and these were launched these are going to be launched really soon. Our lab also supports all the academic aspects of this project, and especially the remote sensing aspects.
Okay, very good.
Can I add one comment on that, Galit?
Of course.
That I think is important. BGU Sat is the only satellite, nano satellite, that is built totally in Israel. There's no element of it that was purchased outside of Israel. So in order to build it, we had to have the computer design, the boards designed, the camera designed here, the frame designed here. Every element was built in Israel and is much more durable also.
Amazing. Very good. Thank you for that. Next up, what was the process that was involved in establishing the agreement with the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs? And of course, it was just about a month or 2 months ago that this collaboration with BGU was announced. So if you can fill us in on the process.
Okay, Daniel.
Go ahead.
Okay. Where actually we've been working with the United Nations for the past several years, and they did recognize our work, our academic work, and our research. And we started off as trainings and specialists in scientific and technical missions. We just served as experts on advisory boards for the United Nations. And having realized our work and our research, we decided to take it one step further and establish the regional support office in Ben-Gurion. It's a work of the past few years. Even though it happened only 2 months ago, we've been working on it for a while. And the next steps are to enhance this center and take it to the local industry and other academic institutes in Israel.
Okay. Very good. You'll probably recall, many of us do, in December of last year, NASA astronaut Jessica Meir tweeted a Hanukkah greeting from space. Are you guys hearing any rumblings? Tomorrow's the first night, of course. Any rumblings about another message coming from space to those who will be celebrating here on Earth?
I think that every one of us at some point in life thinks that there might be life out there somewhere. If we live here, then why not? But I don't think that that's something that we're serious about.
Right.
Not at the moment, let's put it that way. Discussion is much more philosophical.
Got it. And Dr. Maman, the launch you had mentioned of the nano satellite and the others that came along for the ride, the total of 104. The launch was from India. Was there a particular reason for that? Is Israel collaborating with India in any way?
First of all, yeah, we are in a lot of aspects, not only space tech. But the thing is that when we look for a launch, we look for the next available launch. So it's a combination of where do we have space. Basically, we're piggyback riding on a big, this is like a major taxi ride to space. And we're looking for the place on the rocket and for the cost efficient parameters. And that was the best combination at that time. We were very lucky that we were able to launch when we did.
Very good. Very good. I'll take it back to Dr. Blumberg with our next question. Where does the IDF factor into BGU's satellite development program?
We leave it at the question.
Pardon me?
Okay, so I'll give you part of the answer.
If Dan answers, I'll have to kill you.
Yeah, that's
Thanks, Mark.
Level answer.
Yeah. But you must understand that Israel is a small country. We gain our experience through collaborative efforts. And part of this issue of building this nanosat provides the experience in Israel, the ability to demonstrate that we can do it, that we can build a satellite that is entirely built in Israel. And a lot of our students then go into the idea or came out of the idea. We work with them a lot. And beyond that, we'll leave it at that. I think that that's a reasonable answer.
Very good. And I think through both of your presentations, we got an idea of where we're coming from, where we are right now, and where we're going. But I always like to wrap up with a question about the future and looking ahead. So Professor Blumberg, maybe we can start with you. Where are we going next?
So the question is, who are you talking about, we?
Let's cover BGU, but beyond that also.
Let's start off with BGU. Our aspiration at the moment is to build another nano satellite, but this time to include a camera that we've designed in our lab. It's a hyperspectral camera. It's gone into development now through an incubator, which is working with Elbit. And we hope that it will be developed in time for the next nano satellite that we build. We want to call it NegevSat, but obviously we're open to other names and we still need to find the funding. I should also say that BGU Sat, part of it was funded. I really want to acknowledge Max and Rachel Javert from Florida that funded our efforts. And obviously for the next satellite, we're going to have to come up with funding also for that. So that's the main effort. We're also working with Bereshit. So that's another objective that we have in the future. And we're on our map, on our radar, to say. We have some other objectives that we want to achieve in the next few years.
Thanks for that. And Dr. Maman, did you want to add anything, perhaps from the SheSpace area?
Well, as you know, Israel is having her second astronaut from the space, launch to space next year. So we're also supporting Eitan and the Ramon Foundation. And I don't know about you, but I'm still going to Mars.
Thank you so much. Thank you both.
Galit, tremendous moderating and question asking. But the stars really were Shimrit and Dan. You guys join the growing list of superstars at Ben-Gurion University, really. And the fact that you told us that you need funding, we shall do our best to provide that. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your very crazy schedules, as we just heard from Dan, and he told me that he's had already about 4 Zoom calls already, and the day has not yet ended.
Or probably more like 14. Yeah, and I have another few.
Really, I mean, the fact that BGU is also in the forefront of outer space exploration and research is just kudos to you all. Huge thank yous to our listening audience, and a special shout out to my friend, the Ernie Simon, a member of the American Associates of Ben-Gurion University National Board, who I know was listening diligently, and to all of our supporters who participated today. If you'd like to find out more about this outstanding research at BGU, please check us out at www.bengurion.ca. I would like to thank my staff across Canada, especially Galit Solomon for her outstanding work today, but a special shout out to Executive Director from Toronto, Shimmy Wenner, for him organizing this webinar and being in touch with the participants. He did an outstanding job, despite the fact that he had a little problem issue last night with his little doggy at home. And they have to call professional carpet cleaners, and we shall leave it at that. Thanks, hello to my excellent colleagues in Israel, President Danny Chamovitz, Vice President Jeff Kay and his team, and Doug Sesserman, my colleague and CEO of the American Associates. Stay tuned for our next webinar on January 13th, the day after Shimmy Wenner's birthday, called Advancement in Robotics, featuring another 2 of BGU's superstars and award-winning researchers, Professors Amir Shapiro and David Zaruk. And of course, Ben-Gurion, like all world-class universities, relies on its supporters to be able to continue this innovating and out-of-the-box research, the satellite program, etc. I'm just reminding you there are only 3 more weeks left to give a donation and receive a tax receipt for the fiscal year ending 2020. Please call one of our offices if you too would like to help us. And I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you a very Chag Chanukah Sameach and Happy New Year, Gregorian calendar. Remember, stay safe until January when our next webinar, the 13th. Stay COVID safe, wash hands, social distance, wear masks, eat lots of latkes and sufganiyot. And remember, the vaccines will soon be readily available. And we thank Dr. Tal Zaks, BGU, PhD, and MD graduate, CMO of Moderna. Go, guys, go. Thank you so much. Toda rabah v'lehitraot, and let us meet again in safe times, Dan and Shimrit.
Thank you,
so
Mark.
much.
Thank you, Galit. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Shana haba b'Be'er Sheva b'ruya.
Amen.